Right, so here I am, nearly out for a spin. I'm on my track at the moment, just driving up to the main road. I have to put my seatbelt on, or that noise will keep going off. Seatbelts are good, it's just I'm not actually on a road yet. I'm not rambling up this old muddy lane. I'm going out today to try and get stuff done because Mercury, it's retrograde in Scorpio, and there's going to be this transit of Mercury across the face of the sun on Monday the 11th, which is coming up pretty soon as I make this video. And that's a good thing to be aware of, because I think, there are lots of influences in astrology. I tend to think the main one is the moon influence. Lots of other things play into it as well, but it's usually where the moon is. And the moon is actually void, of course, at this second while I'm doing this, so I don't know if it's really advisable, but hey-ho, nice to keep the flow up for YouTube and try and keep the information flowing for you guys. Mercury, it's going to transit the sun. It's a very, very rare thing. It happens about 13 times a century. It's actually going to happen again in 2032 and again in 2039. So, it's these are quite far apart spaced, very special occasions when Mercury transits the sun. Traditionally, that just in itself, even if Mercury isn't retrograde or whatever else is going on, traditionally, that doesn't have any meaning outside of what Mercury retrograde usually has, which is just, look out for problems with travel, transport, and crazy weather. We particularly get crazy weather when Mercury is void in Scorpio, and Mercury is very fully in Scorpio, so maybe that's not so bad. But anything going on with Scorpio turns the colours of the world black and white. Really, you're either one thing or the other. It's either good or bad. Middle ground doesn't tend to make itself known, and it's something that we've got to strive to look for, really, if we're going to keep it real and try and have good experiences as we go through it. So whatever Mercury does in Scorpio is always a bit, in terms of travel, transport, communication, electronics, anything to do with actually communicating with other people or just with the world, with nature even. Difficulties are very likely to come up around that, but with Mercury being retrograde in Scorpio and making that very rare transit of the sun, it could go either way, because with Mercury retrograde, you just don't know what's going to happen, and it really can be good as well as bad. But we've got a beautiful sunny day today, and something tells me that it's just not going to be like that for the rest of the week. I was going to say the rest of the month, but not even for the rest of the week. Maybe not even for the rest of the day, actually. Here we are on a proper road now. So, I'm just a little bit wary of my car. I've checked my tyre pressures, that kind of thing. And I fixed the battery problem that was driving me nuts the other night. I was trying to drive back from a town called Cardigan, which is about 18-20 miles from here. And my battery wouldn't charge up. I've got the light on saying the battery wouldn't charge. So driving, looking out the windscreen like this, desperately trying to see what was coming. And that is real Mercury retrograde kind of example of how it can be. Because actually, when I got back, I actually managed to get back for one thing, which is pretty amazing, because I had to have the headlights on. I kept them on dip, and that meant I had to go quite slowly, and I was really worried. All the way back I was thinking, but only take me 6 hours to walk back from here. Oh great, only 5 hours from here, 3. And eventually I was on this bit of road I'm on now. I thought it's only going to take me 10 minutes to walk from here, it'll be okay. And I got back and everything was absolutely fine. The very next morning, it had all sorted itself out. The car started straight away, sounded as if it had a full battery, and I didn't get the charging light again. I went driving around town and it, no problem at all, but it really looked as if there was going to be a problem, and that's the point I'm trying to make. It can seem as if there's going to be more trouble than there really is going to be. At the same time, you want to keep your umbrella up. As a sergeant of mine, when I joined the British RAF, the sergeant used to say, keep your umbrella up and how can I put this? Keep your umbrella up and you won't get rained on. He said something a bit ruder than that. You can imagine it. But that is really my watchword, because if you've got your umbrella up, it doesn't really matter whether you need it or not, does it? As long as you've actually got it there. And so that is just about the main message. Excuse me a minute, I'll be back any second. There we are, back to it. And yes, that whole keeping your umbrella up thing, I've actually just been thinking of a good example of that. A lot of this is to do with karma, not necessarily all to do with that, but generally speaking, we get what we deserve, even when Mercury's retrograde and things are different. And what I'm thinking of is this chap that I've just been to see was nearly killed, sadly, last year, but happily he's fine. And what happened was he's a beef cattle farmer. He raises cows for meat. And he is actually very sort of kind-hearted. He goes back to the 1950s. He's quite an elderly chap now. And his cows always have good conditions. I'm not really sure about that because they end up on somebody's plate. But he raises them. He's one of the kindest-hearted farmers that I know. As kind-hearted as they can be, really. And one day, last year, he was actually in a giant shed with all his cows, well, bulls actually, and they stampeded over him, and they very nearly killed him. But one of them, with great big horns, put its head down and scooped him up with its horns and threw him up in the air, and he landed in a cattle feeder. He was just hanging there with all his bones broken, and then someone came along and, you know, he was taken to hospital, and I wouldn't like to say everything was okay then, but everything's okay now, and most people in that situation would have died the most horrible, painful death. And that, to me, is an example of, you know, some good karma coming to him, because he's always trying to be good at what he does. And even though, you know, he raises these animals and then they go off to their death, that is the culture he's grown up with and lived with. And let's face it, you know, I mean, are you a vegetarian, are you a vegan? Have you, though, ever in your life ever eaten meat? If so, you know, I bet you didn't mean to cause any pain. I don't think anybody does when they eat meat. But, you know, that's another argument altogether. The fact is, you know, that guy is always within his own kind of knowledge of life and his own sort of culture, really, that he lives in. He's always been the kindest version of himself that he can be, and he's well known round here for being a really good man. So, you know, his karma was that one of the cows seemed to understand what was going on and threw him up in the air, and he survived. I just think that's brilliant. And what's that got to do with the Mercury-Sun transit? Well, the point of what I'm trying to make is that we tend to get what's coming to us. In fact, I actually think we always get what's coming to us. Sometimes it seems disproportionate, sometimes it doesn't seem right, but we're dealing with a string of eternal lives here. That's my take on it. And who knows, you know, what balances and checks are happening in this life because of previous existences. Nobody knows. But he was living the best life he could, so he got away with it in a big way as well. And so that is the upside and the downside of Mercury retrograde. It's kind of dangerous in some ways, but, you know, it's all about what we actually deserve. And never mind the string of eternal lives, we've got to make the best of this one. And if we're doing our best in this life generally is going to be kind to us. And certainly anything to do with Mercury retrograde is more likely to be a kindness than anything else. When it's hard, it's a lesson. But regardless of all that, you know, things are definitely wacky when Mercury is retrograde. They are wacky in a very kind of black and white crazy way when Mercury is retrograde in Scorpio. And so when Mercury is retrograde in Scorpio and transiting the Sun under what I believe is going to be a Taurus moon, I must look that one up. Well, who knows, see, because just there, Taurus moon tends to mean that it's good for being outdoors. And if we're going to have the insane weather I'm expecting, I wouldn't expect it to be great being outdoors, but that is Mercury for you, it really is. So there you go, that's my take on it. Hope you've enjoyed this one, guys. Hope you've enjoyed having a little spin in the West Wales countryside with me. In fact, I'm going to say goodbye now, but I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see out the front and just have a look at where I'm going, because it's beautiful. Thanks for watching. Thumbs up, please, if you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment. We'll share the journey. Share me around the internet if you can. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap that bell. Cheers. Have a good one. Peace.